Alright, we're back for part B of Honest Science Demands a Creator, and in this session we will look at various case studies to see if evolution is true or if creation is true. So in part A we contrasted the claims made by the Bible versus the claims made by evolutionists, and we also discussed these two very important laws of science, the law of entropy and also the law of causality. And let's just quickly review those two. In part A, we looked at this abandoned house and we asked the question, what causes this house to become so run down, to become so old? And we listed these various causes. Firstly, slow random energy exchange. So things like rain and dew and sunlight and all these things accelerate chemical reactions, so the paintwork deteriorates and all the materials deteriorate. Also fast random energy exchange. Things like, let's say, a storm with hail, or a branch of a tree breaks off and hits the house, or a motor car accident, a car crashes into the house. So fast random energy exchange causes faster deterioration of the order and of this house. The lapse of time, does that help? Does that improve anything? No, it only worsens everything. And then finally, why is it called an abandoned house? Because no one was there to do the maintenance, to make decisions, and to work to get the house back in order. Alright? And so we summarized the law of entropy, thinking back to that old house that we saw just now, and thinking back to the manuscript example. Let's summarize the law of entropy and say, what is the enemy of order? And I showed that on my arm, remember? Any small steps of energy exchange, random energy exchange, any big steps of random energy exchange takes you downhill on the slope of entropy. And time lapse also takes you downhill and the order gets messed up. Okay? And what gives us order in the first place? And remember last time we said someone needs to make a decision at a certain point in time, think, plan, strategize, design, and then work. So we're talking about guided energy until we reach the order. Is that clear? Okay. Now, how about the law of causality? Last time we showed this photocopy machine and we talked about the hypothetical corrupt curator. Remember that? And this hand was used to illustrate the original manuscript, and this hand was used to illustrate the substitute. And the hypothetical corrupt curator had to swap the two out in order to steal the true manuscript. Swap the two out, hide the original, and put the duplicate forward, the copy forward, as the real billion-dollar deal. And similarly, the corrupt magicians do exactly the same. They take an original and a substitute, and they bamboozle the crowd, hide the original away, and put the substitute forward as the supposed magic. Okay? And last time I showed that these corrupt evolutionists do exactly the same. Instead of focusing on the billion-dollar deal, where did the original prototypes come from? They focus on the copies and the copies and the copies we see around us in nature, in creation, and they put the copies forward as the cause, and they say that's the cause of everything. And we'll see more of that today in all these case studies. So let's start with the peacock. Okay, this is a two-dimensional abstract representation of a peacock, and yet much effort had to be put into this. If you think of the law of entropy, the artist had to make a decision at a specific point in time, think, plan, strategize, work to get this painting to that level of order. And we are impressed when we see that painting. And who gets the acknowledgement? If you look down on the screen, the bottom there, Julia Swartz gets the acknowledgement for this artwork, right? Now, this is a photograph of a real peacock. And here we experience this wow factor, this wow feeling. And why do we experience it as a wow moment? It is precisely because we see incredible order in front of us, and we see that it is unique. It is not just common and disorderly and boring. It is wow, it is highly ordered. And who gets the acknowledgement for this order? Who gets the acknowledgement for the work done? Let's read Exodus 20. You shall not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the waters under the earth. So the Creator put a kind of copyright on his three-dimensional artwork. And I believe that the Creator is jealous of the glory that is due to him. And this is found in the second commandment of the 10 Commandments, and also throughout the Bible. But many years ago, our family decided to take a step in faith and to start to implement this commandment. So we started by explaining to the children, and we said we would first do three-dimensional images. And so the children were very eager. They ran and fetched their Lego men, and they ran and fetched their plastic farm animals and their soft toys. And what did we do with it? We did exactly according to the Bible instructions. We put it on a fire, and a big column of smoke went up into the air. And I'm sure the neighbors were quite worried. But nevertheless, what about two-dimensional images? So after studying the Bible more and more, we decided to also take down the paintings from our wall, and we told the children, stop drawing those sun faces on your pictures, which is just the representation of the sun god. And so many of these things which we thought purchased our children's education and guaranteed our children's education, many of those things were just junk, and they actually did exactly the opposite. They hindered our children's education. So in any case, this is a long topic, but let's get back to the business for today, and let's just study this order in the peacock and ask the question, was it evolution or was it the Creator? What was the cause? So on this photograph you can see one eyelet of the feathers, the tail feathers of a peacock. And Genesis 1:21 says, and Elohim created every winged fowl after its kind, and Elohim saw that it was good. Elohim is the witness. There were no other witnesses back then, but Elohim is the witness that it happened and that it was good. It was functional, it worked well, and it was properly ordered. Let's study the texture of this feather, and let's study the color. So I'll just put my pointer on, and then, do you see here on the left, these barbules or filaments on the feather are quite coarse. They're quite coarse. And here on the right hand side, after the eyelet, the feathers are quite coarse again. They're different. They're slightly finer, but they're still quite coarse. But can you see here in the center, where the eyelet is, all of a sudden there's a zoom on the resolution required, and all these feathers, all these filaments of the feather are very finely distributed here. Much, much finer than the filaments outside this eyelet. You see that? Now let's look at the coloring. And let's just take one filament here in the eyelet, let's say over there. We first need, say, 3 millimeters of like a neon highlighter blue color, and then like about 15 millimeters of dark purple, almost black coloring. And then you see this very stark boundary there, very crisp boundary. And then like 2 millimeters of blue again, and another crisp boundary. And then over to a copper-like color for many millimeters, like, was it 20 odd millimeters? And then there's a gradual fade, see that gradual fade into a lilac kind of color, and then a darker boundary again, a softer boundary, then 2, 3, 4 millimeters of gold, and a soft boundary, some lilac, and all of a sudden we have a break in texture. Look at that change in texture over there, together with a change in color, and we're back to a coarse feather, or let's rather say a coarse filament. And can you see the eyelet is highly organized, highly specific, special. It's not random, boring, and blurry. It's exactly the opposite. So where did this order come from? And if we look at the brand new looking house like this one we looked at last time, was it someone who made all of this, who ordered all of this? Or was it something that made all of this? Or was it no thing? So the no thing option is completely beyond the question. But some of you might think, well, there were tools involved, like a concrete mixer or a spray gun, or perhaps the architect used artificial intelligence. And I just want to draw your attention again to the fact that every one of those things that were used to help make the house also first had to be made by someone, not no thing or something. Even artificial intelligence, we first need a computer that needs to be made by someone. Then we need the software to be programmed by someone. And only then can we have artificial intelligence. So this is no excuse for the argument. Someone is required to establish order against this law of entropy. And remember the photocopy machine? Where did it come from? Was it someone who made it, planned and designed and worked? Was it something, or was it no thing that made the photocopy machine? Where did this three-dimensional copier come from? This is a living three-dimensional photocopier, in a sense. Where did the order come from? And remember the production line we mentioned last time? Did someone make this production line? Or did something make this production line? Or did no thing make this production line? If you say someone, you're being scientific. You're using your common sense. If you say something, then maybe you don't have much experience, you're being childish, and your imagination is working too hard. If you say no thing, then you are completely deluded, or you are an indoctrinator of lies. Your plan is to indoctrinate others with lies. Either of those options. Alright, where did this automatic production line come from? This is a three-dimensional, automatic, self-replicating production line. Where did it come from? Was it someone? What does the law of entropy say? Can something make a decision at a certain point in time? Can something plan, strategize? Can something design something else? Or was it perhaps no thing? Exactly like the evolutionists say. They say time, chance, and blind energy made everything. Okay, let's move over to the guinea fowl. This is a similar example. It's also a bird. We will also look at the feathers and the coloring of the feathers, but I want to show you something very, very special here. So firstly, also each filament has to know I need to be black for so many millimeters, and then 4 millimeters of white, and then black again. So each filament needs to know what color it should be. So how does this guinea fowl know where the dots must go on its body? It doesn't really know. It's all pre-programmed. Remember last time we said before one copy can be made of a prototype, the prototype must be complete, and everything, including the coloring of the dots, everything must be coded in the DNA before one copy can be made of the original prototype. Is that clear? Right, now for the special feature. And just look at the guinea fowl on the right and the feathers lifting in the air. So I want to tell you a story. We were on holidays many years ago, and the children were still very small, and we had bad weather, and so that cabin fever feeling, you know. And so all of a sudden, a group of guinea fowl came walking past. And we said, whoa, let's quickly get the kitchen scraps. And we threw out the kitchen scraps just outside the sliding door, just outside the glass pane. And so the children could sit right there with their noses almost against the glass and watch the guinea fowl from this far. And they were amazed. And they said, look, Mom, look, Dad, aren't they special? And so we all enjoyed it. And Elohim gave us, the Creator gave us a display of His majesty on that day. We looked at the guinea fowl, and as the wind picked up, the feathers would lift, and then the wind would die down, and the feathers would drop down again. And the feathers would lift, and the feathers would drop down again. And we saw in front of our eyes no pattern, rows of dots. No pattern, rows of dots. And all of a sudden we had that wow moment, and we realized what the Creator, what Elohim was showing us. He showed us that, look, this guinea fowl has dots of feathers organized, ordered around the neck. Smaller dots, and they're in concentric circles like that. Look at the next row. Look at that diagonal curve of dots that are lined up on the three-dimensional outside the body of the guinea fowl. Look at this row of dots, which actually intersects with the other one, and all these dots are coordinated. So what we saw on the day is not only does each filament of each feather need to know where to put black, where to put white dots, but the neighboring feather needs to know my filaments that interfere with the other feather's filaments mustn't spoil the pattern, so that the coordinated effect of all these hundreds and thousands of feathers on the guinea fowl's body creates a display on the outside with them overlapping and interfering the neighboring feathers. You see that? And we were shocked with this order. We were really impressed. So let me show you man's attempt to duplicate this. And let's give these artists a score out of 10. So this artist did well. This is a watercolor painting. Well done. We can clearly see that they are guinea fowl, but what about the dots? Are they well done? Are they true to life? Do they represent the true dots well or not? And if I had to give a score out of 10, they're not even the right size. They're just randomly splattered all over the guinea fowl. I wouldn't give this artist more than 1 out of 10 for the dots. Now the main thing I want to show here is foresight versus hindsight. We saw with the real guinea fowl that there needed to be major foresight. It had to be coded into the DNA before one copy was made. Here the artist just needs to look at the photograph from where they're copying this artwork, and they just need to take the paint, put the tip in white paint, and put the dots in hindsight. Put those dots down, populate those dots in hindsight. See the difference in complexity in the challenge? This is nothing compared to the foresight challenge. Let's look at the next artist. So this was well done, good three-dimensional depth. Do you see that? The guinea fowl heads look very authentic, but the body, the feathers, look a bit blurry. And I wonder why this artist opted to rather make the feathers blurry. Perhaps because it was too hard to put the dots in a row. This artist couldn't get his dots in a row. But some of those dots around the feathers, there are some dots in a straight line there, but on the chest, really not a very good attempt. Score out of 10, what would you give this artist? Perhaps 2.5. I mean, contrast it with the real 100% accurate example. 2.5, maximum 3, maybe 2, depending on the person's mood on the day who gives the score. Okay, now look at this version. This artist said, no, I'm just going to slap this outline on the two-dimensional drawing and not put much effort into the depth or the artwork itself, but just the dots. So can you see that this artist put about 90% of his or her time into populating the dots, trying to get her dots in a row. And we can see some authentic looking rings there, but they don't really line up well. And we can see some short curves here, but it's a bit messy. All these curves actually interfere with some of those curves going down. And over here, the rear of the body, it's completely out of line with reality. And this artist, maybe for enthusiasm, we can give this artist 9 out of 10. But for the real thing, how well are the dots placed on the body of the guinea fowl? I don't know if it's worth more than 4 out of 10. What do you think? This only needs to happen in hindsight. There's no foresight required in terms of all the feathers coordinating the hundreds or thousands of feathers on the body and they're interfering with one another. And the artists couldn't get it right. Okay, what if we give this young artist the feathers? This is quite funny. So we give you the feathers, never mind the size of the dots and the spacing they're given. You have them in your hand. Just go and paste them please in the correct sequence so that the overlapping works. Try and do that for us. There is no way that a person can do this. So now we can appreciate the complexity of the foresight required in the original prototype, in the DNA, pre-programmed, so that each feather which interferes with the neighboring feather doesn't mess up. Look how messy that artwork is. All right, so where did the order come from? Was it someone? Or was it something? Or was it no thing? Will you be scientific and honest in saying your opinion? Or number B, more inexperienced and childish? And number C, will you be completely deluded and try to propagate lies by saying nothing, no thing made this house? And the photocopier, did it make itself through random chance, blind energy over billions of years? Or did someone at a specific point in time had to make a decision, plan, strategize, think, design, work, guided energy up to reach the order? What does the law of entropy tell us? What does science tell us? Who made the automatic production line? What was the cause? Was it someone, was it something, or was it no thing? And remember, last time we said that before one motor car duplicate can be made, we need an original prototype. Where did the prototype come from? When did the people sit down and make a decision and plan, think, design, strategize, work to make the first prototype? And only when the prototype was ready can we start duplicating. And how about these robotic arms, the spot welders? We know that at some point in time, someone had to sit down, a team of people, think, plan, strategize, design, work, guided energy until we have a prototype. The prototype is fully formed, ready, everything is there in the plan. Now we can duplicate the robots. And what about the AI or the software that must drive the robots or tell them what to do? A team of people had to sit down, plan, think, strategize, design the code, work to fix the code, fault find the code, get the code running. And as soon as the code was perfectly running, then we had a prototype, and now we can download to the robots. See how complex it is to make an automatic production line? Now how about this three-dimensional automatic production line? This is a self-replicating three-dimensional piece of art. It's an automatic production line. It can reproduce itself and make a new production line, another production line. How many do you want? You want 10? You want 1,000? You can have them. 1,000 automatic production lines. The scale of complexity, the scale of design is beyond what humans can do. Yet, the evolutionists deny all of this. They kick and scream like a toddler throwing a temper tantrum in a shop. No, natural selection is the blind watchmaker. Let's just pause there. What's going on here? Is natural selection someone, something, no thing, or what is natural selection? It's just a concept. And now a concept gets ascribed almost to be a someone, a watchmaker. So there's confusion going on here. Blind because it does not see ahead. So it's supposedly someone, but not really someone. It's actually blind because it cannot see ahead. It does not plan. It cannot sort of foresee the consequences. It has no purpose in view. Yet the living results overwhelmingly impress us with the illusion, all of a sudden it's an illusion, of design and planning. So what is the illusion here? Is the law of entropy the illusion? Or is the magical arrival of all this complexity through evolution the illusion? Which one is the illusion? Science or evolution? Just think it through a little bit. Now, Romans 1 says, they exchanged the truth of Elohim, the cause of everything, for a lie. What is the lie? Evolution. And they worshipped and served the creature, the effect, Nature is so wonderful. We must preserve nature. We must save the earth. We must save the biodiversity, and we must bring the number of humans down on earth, rather than serving the creator, the cause, rather than being impressed with a real billion-dollar deal. Where did the prototype come from? What is the cause behind the prototype? They're so impressed with the fake copy. And with fake, I don't mean that they're not true. I mean they're not the prototypes. They're the substitutes. The evolutionists use them as substitutes to push the lie, to sell the fake. Okay? Now, let's move over to the golden plover. Still just amongst birds, we see amazing order. The first two, we just looked at feather coloring. And now we will look at navigation skills. So this is a photo of the golden plover, a smallish bird, and they migrate thousands of kilometers over the open ocean. And they go to the exact spot where they lived last time. And so it's fascinating to see them migrate and navigate even with strong cross winds. This is a human analogy of that navigation skill. Who of you have been into a cockpit of a large aircraft like a Boeing? Anybody? See some nods? Yes? And were you impressed? Very impressed. It was a wow moment, right? And what caused this wow experience? Well, we saw just this display of lights and buttons and switches and levers and knobs. And was this disorder, or was it order that impressed us? It was highly ordered equipment that impressed us. And by the way, if we board an aircraft and the captain comes walking out of the cockpit, it's almost like we want to stand up straight and salute this captain and say, well, we respect you because our lives are in your hands. But did you realize that the captain did not make the cockpit? Not one of those instruments or dials or levers or knobs or lights were designed by him. Teams of people had to sit down, think, plan, strategize, design, work to make a prototype Boeing before one duplicate of the Boeing could be made for commercial purposes. Alright? Now, the Creator's order, this golden plover shows similar, if not better, navigation skills than the Boeing aircraft. Let's just list some of the highlights. The golden plover migrates roughly 4,000 kilometers or roughly 2,500 miles between Alaska and Hawaii. That's a long distance. That's an overseas flight, okay? This 88-hour flight for them involves no less than 250,000 consecutive wing beats without any rest across the open sea. 250,000 wing beats, roughly. And when scientists tried to model the energy balances, meaning see how much food the birds eat, weigh them, estimate the amount of fat, and see can they travel that long distance with the amount of fat stored, they were concerned because their model had a 20% error in those calculations. So at first they thought our model is wrong, and yes, there was a mistake in the model because they did not include the V formation of flight that the birds take when they fly, and that saves almost 25% energy. And when they incorporated that into their model, all of a sudden the weight of the birds and the fat being stored matched the distance that they had to fly over the open sea. So can you see the level of foresight? How do the young birds, the newly hatched birds, know how much to eat, how much fat to store in their bodies to be able to travel that distance? They never traveled it before. And you might be tempted to think, they probably learned this from past generations. This skill of the birds to migrate so far, to migrate to that exact spot, is probably because the previous generations learned, and some of them dropped in the ocean and some of them survived. And you're thinking natural selection, and you're thinking passing on of information between previous generations and the new generation. And I can tell you from personal experience that no, that is not the reason. As a young boy, I kept racing pigeons. And on the screen you see a truck which releases these racing pigeons. And most of the clubs, most of these racing pigeon clubs, have special races at the beginning of the season for new young birds, 1-year-old birds, which have never traveled from that release point back home. So they put these birds in the truck, they drive through the night in the pitch dark, and the birds cannot see where they are going. The truck is fully enclosed in any case. And not even a compass would work well in that truck because the truck is enclosed with metal. Okay? So they take the birds to the release point. The pigeons do not know where they are. The pigeons are almost abducted, in a sense. Taken to a place where they do not know where they are at. And when they are released, they start to circle. And they make a few circles. And all of a sudden, they dart off home at 100 kilometers per hour. I'll show you a quick video. And here you can see that the sun is still low. And typically at the turn of the hour, clock strikes and they push the button to open the doors, the automatic doors. And this truck releases the birds in stages so they're not overcrowded when they try to exit. And you can see them forming a flock there at the back, the rear of the truck. And so I guess only 20 seconds has lapsed so far. What do you think? Probably 1 minute for all the compartments to open up. And now you'll see a big flock. See that flock at the rear? The big flock circles. They gain height. They go higher and higher because they want to fly at a certain height, minimum height. And then all of a sudden they just dart off home at 100 kilometers per hour. Isn't that amazing? If you abduct one of these captains, one of these pilots, and you put them somewhere in the middle of nowhere with no beacons and no information of where they are at, and you tell them, now, fly to London, they'll go, what do you mean, fly to London? Which direction should I go? Tell me which direction I should go. And they tell him, no, fly to London. And he will just shrug. Those pilots need to know exactly where they are at, where the starting point is. So this is point A, and this is point B. They need to know exactly where this airport is before they can aim for that airport on the map and have a specific bearing, a specific angle of flight. Okay? If they don't know where point A is, where do they aim for to reach point B? See that? If there's no point A, how can you aim for point B? Yet these racing pigeons, these birds, do not know exactly where they are at. Some of the races are from the open sea. They put them on container ships and they open these containers on the open sea. There's just water, no beacon, just seawater in sight, and the birds, the racing pigeons, make a few turns and they flock together and they head off top speed back home. So isn't this fascinating? And something else I wanted to mention here is a spiritual application. Has your life sometimes felt like this? The birds who get released in the middle of the ocean, abducted, they don't know where they are at, and there's no beacon in sight. Have you sometimes felt as hopeless and directionless as that? And remember, the Bible teaches that sin puts a division between us and our Creator. And has a specific sin, or many sins perhaps, separated you from your Creator? And has this sin perhaps abducted your life so that you feel your life is worthless and hopeless and you don't have any joy or purpose in life? Well, here we see that this Creator, Yahweh, has the ability, the technical ability, to help these birds to migrate back on track and go home. And in the same way, if you humble yourself and put your trust in Yeshua, Messiah, the Creator, how much more, how much higher is His interest in humans? How much higher is His interest in you to help you navigate back on track and to bring you home to Him so that you can have a joyful and productive life in close communion with your Creator. So the order which we see in creation, in the Creator's handiwork, in His work, in His order, is way beyond what humans can do or what humans can copy. Where did the order come from? This automatic production line, was it someone? Was it something? Or was it no thing? Will you side with science, the law of entropy? Or will you side with B, imagination? Or will you side with ludicrousy? Number C, which option will you side with? And how did this self-replicating automatic production line come about? It's three-dimensional art. Where did the order come from? Was it someone? Who was the cause, or what was the cause behind the prototype with all the DNA encapsulated before the prototype could make one copy? Not one copy could exist before the DNA was so ordered that this automatic production line could self-replicate. For something to self-replicate is way beyond what humans can do. Our production lines, our automatic production lines, can they self-replicate? Not a chance. So the complexity here, this replication complexity, is way beyond what humans can do. Who was behind that prototype? Someone, something, or no thing? Are they being clever and scientific if they say no thing? Let me show you a video, and let's just analyze this analogy of Richard Dawkins.
There really is something special about scientific evidence. Science works, planes fly, magic carpets and broomsticks don't. Gravity is not a version of the truth, it is the truth. Evolution, too, is reality. You don't decide whether to believe it or not believe it on the basis of whim or culture. The evidence supports it. Evolution is the plain truth. It works. Planes fly, cars drive, computers compute.
It's an inductive argument.
If you base medicine on science, you cure people. If you base the design of planes on science, they fly. If you base the design of rockets on science, they reach the moon. It works.
We are scientists. We are part of science. It works. And what he's really getting at is he is saying that all the copies of trees we see around us, all the copies of humans, all the copies of plants, animals, fishes, birds, they all work. See that? The effect works. Therefore, we don't need a cause. Away with the cause. Is that science? Is that the law of causality? Or is that bamboozling the crowd, hiding the original argument away and putting the copy forward as the supposed, the fake explanation for the real deal? Where did the prototypes come from? How did the coding of DNA get into those prototypes before one copy could be made of these prototypes? Before one copy could be made, which he then uses for his proof for evolution. See that? But let's just ask the question, cause versus effect. Where did the cars come from, the cars that drive? Didn't someone have to first design, work, and make them? Didn't planes, where did the planes come from? Didn't someone have to sit down, design, and work, make them? Where did computers come from? Didn't someone have to sit down, decide, plan, design, think, strategize, work, make computers? So what Richard Dawkins' whole argument actually teaches us, in truth, is that everything that works needs to first be designed and built. Romans 1:21, they glorified him not as Elohim. Richard Dawkins glorified him not as Elohim, the real cause of the prototypes. Neither was he thankful, but he became vain in his imaginations, the imaginations of evolution, and his foolish heart was darkened even further. Good. Now, we've so far only discussed two features of only birds. So let's cross over to this highly technical single cell and ask the question, how did it originate? How did this particular cell come into existence? And this was an electron scanning microscope photo, and I believe the coloring was added afterwards on computer. So the colors are fake, but it does help us to visualize and identify the different parts. Now, as an analogy, I want to show you this sports stadium under construction. It has a similar shape, right? And let's go down to this level and look at more details. Try to identify certain features, specifically certain systems that the builders, the engineers, and the designers, the architects, which they all have to deploy on site in order to make this work. So looking right in front here, I'll just switch the pointer on. Right in front here we see a barrier, we see fencing. See the fencing in front here? So most construction sites have fencing around them, and big ones are even guarded to keep unwanted people out and to allow the wanted people in during construction. Okay, what else do we see? Well, we see transportation systems, see the motor cars there, crane, and the crane can hoist things into place. And that reminds me that these days often new buildings are constructed with precast concrete modules, almost like Lego. So some building sites would have an on-site kind of factory where they cast this structure or the component in concrete and then lift it with a crane into position and just pack it where it needs to sit. So we have perhaps local factories, concrete factories here on site, or local production factories, I should rather say. And what else do we see? I see traffic lights over here, see the traffic lights, and people probably communicating on mobile phones, so we have communication systems, and they would be installing computer networks in this stadium, agree? And anything else that I left out? Oh, here, that would be a on-site power generator. We need power to do the work, to help us do the work. And many of these features that we see in a construction site exist in a single cell. So a single cell is like a sports stadium, but that is an underestimate. Scientists say that the complexity of a single cell is closer to the complexity of a city. So, but let's get back to the sports stadium equivalent. First thing I want to show you is the outside boundary, or the membrane, the cell membrane. That is the boundary fence. And it's guarded. Sophisticated guarding takes place. I'll show you a diagram just a bit later. And then I forgot to mention, for the sports stadium, they need a central office, a builder's office, where they keep the blueprints. Okay? So no blueprints, no stadium. See that? No blueprint, no stadium. So the central office is here in the center. We see the cell nucleus there, where all the information is kept on how to duplicate this cell. And it's closer to a city library. It contains so much information, a builder's office doesn't do justice. It's more like a city library full of information. And then over here we see some networks that may be certain transportation routes or communication networks. And this is probably an organelle, like a local factory where things get built, like proteins get constructed, and once the protein building blocks are ready, they get transported on something like a conveyor belt to the different parts of the cell where they are needed to either build a new one or fix damage to the cell wall or whatever the proteins are needed for. And we'll see examples later. So the complexity is mind-boggling. It's system upon system upon system that needs to integrate and work together in this big city or sports stadium, and that is how complex the cell is. So let's read some more. There are hundreds or thousands even of these organelles, these mini factories, inside one single cell. And these different organelles typically have different functions. So there are hundreds and hundreds, thousands of different functions that need to be fulfilled before a cell can live and stay alive. We just mentioned a few, like transportation system, local factory, boundary, head office. We just mentioned 4 or 5. There are hundreds of these that need to work together before a cell can function and stay alive, never mind to duplicate. Okay, complexity and order. Just a few years ago, 2022, I believe, this was a statement made by scientists. We have only a very rough idea of how to model a cell. It's hard to build a model if you don't know, take note, exactly what Lego bricks go into it. There may be living tasks or functions essential for life which science is oblivious to. So these scientists are acknowledging the complexity of a cell, and they say their task of modeling the cell is very difficult because they don't even know exactly what needs to go into that model. Right? And here is one diagram of how scientists try to make sense of all the complexity. These are pattern recognition receptors amongst other signaling pathways, and you can see virtually 50 or 100 odd different arrows and little diagrams to try and remind scientists of the complexity of just this set of functions inside the cell. Other scientists have acknowledged to model the simplest microbe in the world, you need 128 computers. Now that is just a broad statement. It depends how accurately you want to model the cell. You might need 10 times as many computers if you really want to model it very, very accurately. Good. So, where did the order come from? What was the cause behind the prototype? Was it someone, or was it something, or was it no thing? Just a reminder. And also the automatic production line, was it someone, or was it something, or was it no thing? And how about the cell? What was the cause of this super complex central library? What was the cause of the outer membrane? What was the cause of these factories, these communication systems, signaling pathways? In the first presentation, we had these Scrabble letters. Remember that? 2 languages, one on either side. And if we use random energy, will we ever get a sentence out? Will these letters line up even? They won't even line up. Will we get all the letters to turn to the right side for, let's say, the English language? Will we get the letters to line up and form a sentence? That is the impossibility of getting one small protein, the smallest of proteins, just from random chance. It's impossible. How much more if we had to organize an entire city library with information? If we have to have these automatic production lines, the cell can self-replicate, make a new one. A self-replicating automatic production line. Does that come about through random blind energy? No, the law of entropy says the only way to get order is someone needs to decide, plan, strategize, think, design, and work to establish the order. It's super clear. So let's cross over to the bacterial motor, which we mentioned in part A. This is an electron scanning microscope photo again, and these bacteria all have these tail-like structures, you see them? But they don't just wag like a dog's tail, they actually spin like a biological propeller, and they spin at thousands of RPMs. This is a human equivalent of the bacterial motor, and here we can see the cause in action. Can you see the technicians testing the windings of this stator? It's a certain part of the motor. And here we see more parts. First, let's identify the stator again. Over there, the copper windings and the magnetic core. So this is the part which stays stationary, but it provides the electromagnetic push for the rotor. So the rotor is the one which turns, the one that I'm indicating now on the screen. That is the electromagnet which receives the push, and therefore it turns the shaft. Okay? The shaft is mounted on bearings. The bearings are very important because we don't want the shaft to wobble, and it will wear out very quickly with the shaft wobbling, and it also robs the energy, so it brings the efficiency of the motor down if we don't have good bearings. And one last important thing is, look at the electrical connections there. We could build in an electric switch there, and we could switch the motor on and off easily. Just think of a food processor or a blender stick, switch on, off, on, off. Okay? Now, let me show you the creator's order, the creator's version. On the left, we have an actual electron scanning microscope diagram. Now, it's not just one photo. Apparently, it's zoomed in so much that they had to take many photos and get the averages to recompile the photograph. And the diagram on the right is important because here we see all the different colors, and the colors represent different proteins. So it's very important to understand that each protein must come from a different manufacturing process. So different proteins, different kind of Lego blocks that had to be manufactured and brought via transportation systems to the assembly point and packed in position to form this electric motor. Here we have the full diagram with labels. Let's just read the analogous labels. Drive shaft, over there, the light purple part. Bushing, that's equivalent to the bearing. Stator, stationary part which gives the push. But here I must say that I believe it is an electrostatic motor, not an electromagnetic motor. So electrostatic push, and then the rotor, that's the turning part which receives the push in order to turn the shaft. So electrostatic rotor. And then at the bottom, surprise, switch regulator. These bacteria cruise like little submarines in water, and they can start and stop at an instant, just like a stick blender, start and stop, start and stop. And all of these technical feats are built into this micro machine which scientists struggle to even see on an electron scanning microscope. The order of complexity is way beyond what humans can replicate. Our motors, one has to be built at a time. These motors are self-replicating. They replicate into millions of other bacteria, and so the complexity of the design is way beyond what humans can replicate. Let's read more about the order. With the propeller attached, up to 1,000 RPMs is achieved, similar speed to our industrial electric motors. The rotor alone, that is if they clip the tail off, can spin up to 6,000 RPMs and even more. So this little micro machine is so efficient that it can move bacteria through liquid media. Take note. Think of the beach. Go to the beach, go to a swimming pool, go in shoulder depth and try to run through the water. And that reminds us of the drag which these bacteria experience. But they just zoom through the water at speeds of up to 60 cell lengths per second. And in comparison, a cheetah, the fastest land animal, with traction, it can put its claws into the ground, into the grass, only does 25 body lengths per second. So, normalized to body size, the bacteria can spin or zoom through the water twice as fast as a cheetah on land, if normalized to body size. Good. Where did man's order come from? Where did this electric motor come from? Time, chance, blind energy? Did no thing design it? Did something make it? Or is it scientific to say the law of entropy teaches us someone has to make a decision at a certain point in time? Only then can this whole process of ordering start. Now, look at the analogy. Look at how similar they are. How did this electric motor come about? Someone, something, or no thing. Will you align with science, the law of entropy? Or will you align B with childishness and imagination? Or will you align with indoctrination of lies, number C? Which one will you align your thoughts with and your opinion with? No, says this evolutionist, natural forces work like magic. See the bamboozling starting there? It is tempting to think that the spontaneous formation of so complex a machine is guided. So what she's saying is, under this electron scanning microscope, we can see this formation of the electric motor, and so it all happens by itself. But we know, who's we? Us scientists who are so clever. We know that it assembles and functions automatically according to known natural processes. And now for the highlight of the day, no intelligence required. Is that a scientific statement? Is that common sense? Or is that a lot of nonsense? What if a fraudulent tour guide takes a group of school children to this factory, to this automatic production line, and says to them, look, boys and girls, technical forces work like magic. It is tempting to think that the spontaneous formation, the copying of these complex motherboards is guided. But no, boys and girls, we know that they assemble and function automatically according to known technical processes. Therefore, boys and girls, do you see no humans in the picture? This all happens automatically, and therefore, boys and girls, we know that no intelligence is required in producing these motherboards. Exactly what the evolutionists say about the bacterial motor. So how are they tricking, how is this magician tricking the audience? By distracting their attention from the original argument, where did the original prototypes come from, and by replacing it with a substitute. Look, it works. It copies by itself. This is the cause, and they put the fake reason, the fake argument forward as the cause, instead of focusing on the real argument, where did the original prototypes come from, and what was the cause behind them. So is it now obvious to you that these evolutionists are swapping cause and effect? And that is their technique, how they bamboozle billions of people on the planet and convince them that evolution is true because it works, supposedly. Professing themselves to be wise, these evolution professors, they became fools, says the Bible. Psalm 14, the fool has said in his heart, there is no cause. There is no Elohim. The copies do it by themselves. They are corrupt evolutionists, corrupt magicians. Right, now for the sixth and final case study, planets and stars. If we look up at the skies at night, on a dark night, and we see the beautiful stars and galaxies, why do we experience beauty? Why is it a awe moment, a wow moment? Because we identify order, something special, the opposite of randomness. It's not blurry and messy, it is very, very ordered. And order and beauty always go hand in hand like that. So, this is my equivalent for today, the analogy, and I will take this bottle of solution, bubble solution, and let's just blow a few bubbles and remind ourselves of the wow moment which toddlers experience. Let's try that. See that? And why do toddlers enjoy it so much? Why do they keep blowing and blowing and say, look mom, look dad, it's amazing, look at my bubbles. Why are they so excited about their bubbles? think of order versus disorder. The bubbles are special. They're not just random and like boring everyday stuff. They are special and they're beautiful. So remember, if we see beauty, that should remind you of order. Okay? Now, look at these floating bubbles in the universe, in the solar system. Why are they impressive? Why do we experience this wow feeling when we look at planets and stars? Because they're not random. This isn't just a blurry mess. This is highly ordered. For instance, why are the different planets made up from different materials? Why do they have different consistencies? And in terms of energy, why isn't the energy just mixed and spread out everywhere in the solar system? Why is like more than 90% of the energy focused and grouped here in the sun, and very little of the energy is actually over there amongst the planets? We see grouping, we see order. And the billion-dollar question is, where did the order come from? What was the cause behind the order? And let's read this acknowledgement by a scientist. Many stars are grouped or ordered into clusters, and we are puzzled by this. Many clusters are then grouped or ordered into galaxies, and we are puzzled by this. And the galaxies themselves are then grouped into clusters or ordered into clusters of galaxies. Why on earth, or what in the heavens, is this order doing over there? Who ordered the universe? Was it someone? What does the law of entropy teach us? Or can something sit down and have a meeting and make decisions to work and order? Can no thing sit down and decide at a specific point in time to make decisions? And can no thing work? The law of entropy is clear. Why are these evolutionists so naive and stubborn? 2 Peter 3 says, "For this they are willingly ignorant of, that by the word of Elohim," that's a term for the Messiah, meaning the cause, the heavens were of old, the effect. They are confusing cause and effect, and they believe their own lies. Where does this influence come from? Who wants to dethrone the Creator? Who wants to get him out of the way, get rid of the Creator, get rid of the cause? Isaiah 14, "How have you fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, Satan? For you have said in your heart, I will exalt my throne above the stars of Elohim. I will be like the Most High." So the root cause of this sentiment of trying to get rid of the Creator, to dethrone him, comes from the enemy himself, Satan himself. Listen to this quote and see if you can identify any of the fruit of the enemy, any of these dethroning type fruit. "We seek therefore to bless ourselves with perfect knowledge and perfect will, to become as gods, take the universe in hand," how ridiculous, how pathetic is that statement, "and transform it in our own image," blasphemy, "for our own delight. As it is on earth, so it shall be in the heavens," the inevitable result of incredible improbability. Now playing the blur game again, bamboozle game again. Yes, incredible improbability, but we are doing it. The arrow of evolution, lifting us into the transhuman, salvation attained by good works. In direct contrast to the truth, in direct contrast to the Bible, the evolutionists operate in their rebellion. So rather than these ridiculous lies and overconfident rebellion, let's state what honest science has taught us today. someone external to the universe cannot make itself, the law of causality, someone had to decide, plan, and order the universe at a specific point in time. The law of entropy, a decision at a certain point in time. And only after the decision can we plan, design, and then can we work to establish the order. The bigger the project, think of the construction site for the sports stadium. The bigger the project, the more work, the more energy, and the more willpower is required for the project. Keep that in mind. And this all, if we look around us at creation, and just a few things we studied today, it involves mind-boggling intelligence and meticulous planning. Mind-boggling intelligence and meticulous planning, which is exactly the opposite of blind energy, chance, and millions of years. Does Yahweh, the Elohim of the Bible, qualify for these points that we've just listed now? Is he external to the universe? Psalm 90 says, "From everlasting to everlasting you are Elohim." So he is external to time. 2 Chronicles, "Who is able to build him a house, seeing the heaven and heaven of heavens cannot contain him?" Yahweh is external to the universe. A specific point in time, Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, roughly 6,000 years ago, Elohim created the heavens and the earth. It's very much logical and scientific to believe that statement. Revelation 4 verse 11, "You created all things, and through your will they exist and were created." Think of the sports stadium and the willpower necessary to build that sports stadium. Through your will, the whole universe exists and everything was created. How about work? Working up the slope of entropy. Isaiah 45, "I made the earth and created man on it. It was my hands which did the work. It was my hands that stretched out the heavens." Isaiah 5, "But they do not regard the deeds of Yahweh, nor do they see the work of his hands." So it's clear from the Bible that Yahweh matches these requirements, these scientific requirements for creating the prototypes. Jeremiah 10, power and intelligence. "He made the earth by his power. He established the world by his wisdom, and he stretched out the heavens by his discretion," his intelligence. Another one, Psalm 147, "Great is our Lord, and of great power or energy. His understanding, his intelligence is infinite," says the Bible. So, in part A, we discussed the claims of the two sides. We summarized the two laws of science. In this session, we studied these case studies, just a few items from a vast number of things that you can study in creation. And we have come to the conclusion that all that is due is thanksgiving. The argument and the outcome is obvious, but what is due is thanksgiving. Psalm 136, "Oh, give thanks unto Yahweh, for he is good, for his mercy endures forever. To him who alone does great wonders, for his mercy endures forever. To him that by wisdom made the heavens, for his mercy endures forever. Give thanks to him who stretched out the earth above the waters, for his mercy endures forever. Give thanks to him that made great lights, for his mercy endures forever. Give thanks to him who made the sun to rule by day, for his mercy endures forever. And the moon and stars to rule by night, for his mercy endures forever. Give thanks to him who gives food to all flesh, for his mercy endures forever. O give thanks unto the Elohim of heaven, for his mercy endures forever." 1 Chronicles For all the gods of the people are idols, but Yahweh, the Elohim of the Bible, He made the heavens, and He made all the prototypes on earth. Yet, the evolutionists kick and scream. No, the theory of evolution by natural selection, they say, is the mechanism, explains the adaptedness and diversity of the whole world solely materialistically. It no longer requires Elohim as creator or designer. So the evolutionists claim that the mechanism was natural selection which caused everything to be ordered. And that is why next time we have to talk about natural selection and, take note, random mutations. And so until next time, Joshua 1, be strong and courageous. Only be strong and very courageous. Have I not commanded you, says Yahweh, be strong and courageous. So until next time, Shalom in Yeshua, our Messiah. Blessings to you and your family.